Hello, Buckeye fans, and welcome to another episode of the Bucknuts Happy Hour. I am Patrick Murphy here with you today. We are into game week. We are almost to game day. We're recording this on Thursday, August 29th, before the Buckeyes open their 2024 season against Akron on Saturday. We're going to crack a drink. I'm having a seltzer here. I don't usually drink seltzers on this, though I do like seltzers. But we're going to go with a White Claw because, frankly, that's what I had in the refrigerator today. I need to go replenish before the season gets underway, before college football starts tonight. All right, we're going to dive into the Buckeyes, and he hasn't been around much recently, but we're bringing back Timmy Hall. Timmy, it's a hat day on the Bucknuts Happy Hour, and you've got a beverage.
I do have a beverage. I guess I've been losing the invitations to the happy hour for the past 6 months or so. Hope the show's been going well without me, Pat.
You've just been gone so much. You're not even on your own show half the time. I just don't know even where to find you anymore. It's like your number changed or something.
Well, we got a lot of shows over at the Fan, Pat. So sometimes, when you got a bunch of 10-year guys that all have 5 or 6 weeks of vacation, people are missing their shows. So
yeah,
it has felt like for the past 3 weeks or so that I've been missing the Buckeye show, but it's been good to be back on there this week and ready to get it going. I mean, we had Anthony Rothman sick for the last couple of days, which still you get to game week, you feel like it's that first week where everybody gets back from summer vacation and it's full bore. And then Monday, Tuesday, we had Anthony who was out sick, but he was back today. So it was good to hear him doing his show with Matty Ice and everybody back to full strength. Excited to do a show with Tyvis tonight, and you're going to be there as well. And yeah, I'm not sitting here. I have to say I'm not drinking here in the office, although I was gifted these cool cups by our proud new sponsor of the Buckeye show for the next year, Coors Light. So I'm kind of I'm off the market now when it comes to the beer game. So I told you, like it was a month or two ago, I said the one domestic beer that I'm still really messing around with these days is the Silver Bullet Coors Light. So it just makes perfect sense. So thanks to them, I got all these cool cups here that aluminum cups, pretty good. So the ice water tastes mighty fine in here.
Yeah, if you want to pass my name along to them, tell them what we do here at the happy hour. I wouldn't mind sipping Coors Lights during the show, but we can talk about.
You know what? I mean, because look, like the whole thing, it's got the Buckeye logo, the drink responsibly, all that. This is perfect, right? I'll put in a good word for him. You do a good job on the segment tonight. Whoa, baby. Could be going your way.
All right. Challenge accepted. All right, Tim, let's talk Buckeyes. We've spent the offseason on various platforms talking about this team. We are now 2 days away from game day. What are you most excited about as the 2024 season kicks off here in just a couple days?
I think I am super excited to see how Will Howard commands this offense. And more than just commands the offense, though, you need a guy that is really good. You need a playmaker. So hopefully you're going to see a guy that is grabbing the bull by the horns and taking advantage of this opportunity that he has. Because the guy that we saw at Kansas State, I don't know if we would say that he was an elite quarterback. And you're hoping to see a player that at least gets somewhere close to that word elite. And I do think that, what he's going to bring to the table is different from what we've seen from the quarterback position. Even when CJ Stroud was there, he did not really have that knack to run the football, to put his head down and collect some of that green grass that was ahead of him until that Georgia game. We'd all clamored for it. We'd all wondered about it. And then against Georgia, he finally said, you know what? I'll use the wheels a little bit and do what I got to do. Will Howard, that's a huge part of what he does. That might be 40% of his game as a quarterback. And I don't know what that split's going to look like, but I know his legs have to be a big component in what he does. But I'm also looking to see how consistent this guy is passing the ball. I mean, he's a quarterback, so you want to be able to see him sit back in the pocket and distribute to all these talented wide receivers. I'm not positive that he's going to be that consistent guy. So I'm dying to see that even in these first few games against weaker opponents, Pat.
Yeah, and before we get rolling here, I forgot to mention, if you have any questions about the Buckeyes, you want to throw those in the chat. Tim and I are also going to do some bold predictions here in just a little bit. So if you have bold predictions, feel free to throw those in the chat, and I will read some of those off later, and we can discuss our thoughts on those. I agree with you, Tim. Will Howard's certainly intriguing because in the spring, I came out of it like, he looks okay, but I'm not sure that that's the guy. There's enough talent on this team. He should be fine. The Buckeyes should be fine. But we said the same last year. You needed a guy who could do some things. And yeah, I knew he was going to use his legs, and you covered that. But I saw a guy in fall camp that looked the part. Maybe he's not a Heisman Trophy finalist at the end of the year like a Justin Fields or CJ Stroud or Dwayne Haskins. But certainly I think he convinced me more that he could be closer to that than I would have guessed coming out of spring practice. Flipping over to the defensive side of the ball in terms of just what I want to see. I want to see this defense just take what they did last year and take it up a level. I don't know how you do that because they were dang good last year. Well, we probably won't know for sure until they start playing some better offenses here in about a month or so. But I want to see this defense just carry it over from last year and start to build on that. You have everybody back almost. You've added a Caleb Downs. You got Sonny Styles playing closer to the line of scrimmage. Yeah, they've talked about wanting turnovers and wanting to shut teams out.
Yeah.
Here's your opportunity. Go turn Akron over 3 or 4 times, shut them out, keep them out of the end zone. I think that's a big opportunity for this defense to make a statement, even though you're playing an opponent that you're, close to a 50-point favorite against.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, you can't write the script on this defense, and we know that. And that's also, I think, what we celebrate too, Pat, is that you get a little bit exhausted of talking about all these things for the entire summer, even in this town, right? Even all of us people that cover the Buckeyes, where this is a special place where we don't typically get exhausted of talking about the Buckeyes because the whole entire year revolves around college football. It's Ohio. Football's in our blood. It's ingrained deep into our culture. It's what we do. We build our weeks around these Ohio State football games. But I think even for the best of us, by the time we get to late August here, we have just been breaking things down and predicting things for month after month after month after month. And we just want to get into the rhythm of the season, right? Where the weeks just start ripping off of the calendar. And Akron week's going to turn to Western Michigan week, and then we get that bye week, and then it's Marshall week, and then we're on to Big Ten play, and then Iowa's coming here, and then we're going on the road to Oregon, right? Excuse my colors. This actually is Seattle Supersonics t-shirt. Nothing to do with the Oregon Ducks, and I wouldn't wear these colors during Ducks week. Just beware. Just took a trip out to the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and it's the way I get my souvenirs. I go to Mitchell and Ness, and I go crazy. So it's a lot, Pat. We just want to see the games being played, but the defense on paper does look like it could be an all-time level defense, but you can't at all start to have that conversation unless this team accomplishes something. So they would have to win the national championship. Then there's a good chance if they win the national championship, it will be because this defense is awesome. And I'm with you. I mean, they only gave up 145 yards through the air last year. It was number 1 in the country by 15 or 20 yards. So what are they going to be shooting to hold teams to the century mark? Like they look like they could be that good with everybody back plus a Caleb Downs. So it could be insane. You mentioned a guy as talented as Sonny Styles. He moves closer to the ball, so you can utilize him. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for their defensive line. I'm excited for everything on that defense, to be honest.
Yeah, and you mentioned the defensive line right there. Look, they were good by the end of the season, but especially a Jack Sawyer. Can this be a defensive line that is game-changing? Ryan Day was talking about it on his radio show today about how Jim Knowles wants the defense to play as a unit. He wants the pass rush to affect the coverage and the coverage to affect the pass rush. And they got pressure last year, but can they start getting home more frequently? And that's where I think you could see changes. Okay, they start getting some sacks, which they didn't get. They get those turnovers that they weren't getting a ton last year. I think only 11 in 12 or 13 games last year. So, that's where I think, statistically, you can say that they played some bad offenses. They played quarterbacks that couldn't really sling it around. And, it is what it is. You got to play teams on your schedule. But no doubt that was a good defense. Now, what is the next step? And I think those things are certainly a part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, wouldn't you give up yards to make a few more of those plays? I think they would all, I mean, 145 passing yards, that's great. But in the end, what's the difference if it's 145 or 195, but you're generating 2 more turnovers a football game? I mean, those extra possessions are worth a hell of a lot more than just 50 yards given up on defense. If you weren't even, giving up points on those drives, a couple more first downs throughout the game, who really cares? Like, I'm with you. I think that's the next step. You talked about the evolution of this defense. It seemed like they got comfortable in just keeping everything in front of them and being a little bit more on the safe side. I think maybe flashes of what happened late in that Georgia game were kind of burning them and keeping them up at night. It's like, why are we going to try to do this when we were right there and our offense could have, had one extra chance to, get us to the finish line in that game, or if we just could have gotten a closer, chance on that field goal. That's how close we were. So why do we need to, go crazy and risk all this on defense? But I just think there's just a way that you play defense around here, and it's just to pin your ears back, and it's a go balls to the walls and try to, like you said, sack the quarterback and create some turnovers. You've got to wreak havoc on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and ultimately, and the defense has talked about this, winning is what matters. And you said that. To be an all-time great defense, they need to, accomplish those things they set out to do. Win the Big Ten, beat Michigan, win a national championship. And that's how you get remembered. You think of that 2002 national championship team, even the 2014 national championship team. I don't know off the top of my head where they were ranked statistically. I know they won the national championship and they played their part, right? So that's the difference, I think, is getting the job done. As good as they were last year, couldn't get the stops you needed against Michigan. Ultimately, as good as they were in that Cotton Bowl game, Jim Knowles said it this week, we could have won that game 3-0 if we get a couple more stops. And he's right. I mean, that's a lot to put on a defense. You want the offense to go out and score points, but they thought they were good enough to do that. And they just, they broke again a little bit at the end of there. And it ultimately led to Missouri winning that game. So that's going to be the difference. Can you get those wins in those tough games? And they did that. Notre Dame game, defense played a hell of a game, right? Allowed the offense to win it late. And so that's what I want to see is those next steps.
Yeah.
All right, Tim, I asked you to come up with some bold predictions. I've got a few bold predictions for this one. If you guys watching this, if you're watching this live, have some bold predictions for this season, throw them in the chat. Like I said, we'll read those. Also, if you have any questions, throw those in there as well. Tim, I'll let you start off. Bold prediction, go.
Well, it's interesting that Rick in the chat right there brought some numbers to the table, and there you go. And I don't have the sheet in front of me, but I trust you, Rick, because I was looking at that in the last couple of days as well. And that's if it's not spot on, it's very close.
Yep.
11 turnovers.
For those listening, Ohio State's defense generated 11 turnovers last year, 7 interceptions and 4 fumbles. I think Rick's spot on there.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. 7 picks, 4 fumbles. So just what we were talking about. And I believe that this is going to be wildly different. It's going to be so different this year. I will say that this Ohio State defense is going to generate a minimum of 25 turnovers this year.
All right.
And I honestly don't think that that's too bold. I'll also say that. I mean, you talk about an average of a couple of turnovers per game. I don't think that that's asking too much. I almost want to try to bump that up to 30 for the season. And I think, like, with statistics, we get to count everything, every game that gets played all the way through to the national championship game. And you know how many football games that's going to be. So between fumbles and interceptions, I'd like to see the Buckeyes shoot for 25 to 30 in that department.
Yeah, I think that is fair. If they're going to be as good as we think they're going to be, I don't know why you couldn't get to that number. I'd have to go back and look at like what some of these Georgia defenses have done. I know some years they've been really good at turning the ball over and some years they haven't, but just some of the top defenses in the country. My first one is also on the defensive side of the ball, that Sonny Styles will lead this team in turnovers.
Tackling?
Turnovers.
Sonny
Styles. I think this kid, and I've loved him since I saw him in high school, the fact that they are now putting him in the middle of the defense and letting him, kind of patrol around in there, I think he is going to be involved. Tip balls on the ground, things like that. I think he, if we're talking bold, he has the opportunity because of where they're positioning him and the way I think the Buckeyes will use him to just be around the ball a lot. And I think if your prediction is going to come true and they're going to be a high turnover team, Sonny Styles will be involved in a lot of those. I'm going to say he leads the Buckeyes in total turnovers. What do you got next?
That's bold, man. That is bold. But I think it just goes to show you all the excitement on this defense with a guy like Sonny Styles and with a football player as good as Caleb Downs coming into the fray. So I don't know how a lot of that's going to shake down back there, but I know that they're all going to be sharing in some of these turnovers. Caleb's going to have some. Denzel Burke's going to have some picks. Igbenogsen's going to have some picks. The defensive line is going to be getting some sack fumbles. Sonny's going to be involved. Cody Simon's going to be involved. All of them. I'll go to our man, Jeremiah Smith, okay?
Nice.
For a bold prediction. I will say that he is going to break 1,000 yards and be north of 10 touchdown catches as a true freshman, which, as we know, looking at the history of true freshman wide receivers at Ohio State, will easily put him down as the best true freshman to ever do that here at Ohio State.
Yeah, I am actually, as we speak, I'm almost done with a story going back and looking at all the recent, going back all the way to Chris Olave, his freshman year, the recent Ohio State freshmen, the main contributors, and what they did their freshman year. It's not a ton of production, to be honest.
No.
If you are right, he will far exceed what any of those guys have done. And I think what any freshman receiver did.
I think it's below 700 yards. I think it's Chris Carter 84.
Okay, that would make sense.
It's below 700 receiving yards. So I think he's going to smash that. I think he's going north of 10 touchdowns. And for a Super Bowl, how about we can put him into the Heisman ceremony?
Woo-hoo, as a freshman. Interesting. I may have a Heisman. Heisman. That may be part of one of my bold predictions in a minute.
Yeah, a Caleb Downs Heisman hunt.
Don't ruin things, Tim. We'll get there. I'm going to stick with the receivers as well. I could see Jeremiah Smith putting up numbers like you're talking about, but I will say that it is Carnell Tate, a guy who I do not think is getting talked about enough.
No, he's not.
I think I know because I asked him, he's okay with that. He's fine. He's going to go show people. He will be the Buckeyes' leading receiver this year. And I think they could put up some really big numbers just because, even if Will Howard is good, not great, get the ball into these guys' hands. I mean, I think if Emeka stayed healthy last year, he would have had a really big season alongside Marvin Harrison Jr. There is room for numbers in this offense. Now, they're going to run the ball more, I think. So maybe that takes a little bit off of what they do in the passing game. But I just think Carnell Tate is a special player. And not that Emeka and Jeremiah are not. They both are too. But if we're being bold here, I'm going to go with the guy that's not getting talked about a lot and say that he leads this team in receiving this season. I'm going to say receiving yards. Maybe he doesn't have the most catches, but I think he can have some
touchdown catches, receiving yards.
Yeah. All right.
I'm
you got another one?
I'm with you. When you talk about receiving, I'll go with receiving yards there for the main stat. I've got another bold one. I think when I'll stay on offense and I'll go back to that backfield. And I said this before, but I think you're going to see Travion and Quinshon Judkins really work as a true tandem here. And I think you're going to have two 1,000-yard running backs back there. And I think as a team, they're going to be north of, say, 3,250 for rushing yards, 3,250 rushing yards as a team, because Will Howard's going to be in on that. And then you're going to see somebody like James Peoples get some opportunity. You don't know if there's going to be an injury for a game or two, or one of the main two backs is going to be out. But I think ultimately they'll still both get to 1,000. I think Will's going to be in that 600 to 800 rushing yard range. And then I think you're going to see some of the depth guys be able to get in and get some action and put up some some occasional big games. Remember, we had a guy like Dallin Hayden here recently who would come in there and, rip off a 150-yard performance, and then you'd never see him again. So you've got guys, as long as that offensive line does their job, I believe in anybody that's going to run the football. I've always felt that way about Ohio State, that it really didn't matter to me, what we talked about with depth at running back. Obviously, you got to recruit really good ones, but I think they have really good ones. But we've seen whenever we've had to, go down to that second, third, fourth guy, someone's always been pretty serviceable. And if not serviceable, looked really damn good, So Dallin Hayden, a perfect example, somebody like that. So, yeah, big things from Quinshawn and Trey and the way the entire running game looks.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Dallin Hayden and not getting that opportunity. That's the reason he's going to be playing for Colorado tonight on the start of week 1, Thursday night football.
Tough game for Colorado, North Dakota State.
It is.
I'm wearing their colors, the green and yellow.
That's true. I do like that. And you mentioned James Peoples. Look, I don't know if it's going to happen this year. In fact, I think it's better off for the Buckeyes if it doesn't, because that means that the starting 2 running backs stayed healthy. But you've got a player in James Peoples. From what we saw in fall camp, from talking to him, he's going to be a stud, no doubt about that. All right, my last bold prediction, you kind of already ruined it a little bit. I think Caleb Downs is a Heisman Trophy finalist. I think he gets most of that work done on defense. I don't know if he puts up 107 tackles like he did at Alabama last year, but I think he certainly makes his impact felt. And then I do think he's going to play a little on offense. I don't think it's going to be a lot, but he talked about wanting to do it. Ryan Day's not shied away from the fact that they're probably going to use him. I don't know if you'll see it early in the season because they won't need it, but I think he's going to get some carries. It wouldn't surprise me if he scores a few touchdowns on offense. And we all know if you're a defensive player, that's a way to get yourself in the Heisman mix. The Buckeyes should be one of the top teams in the country. Attention will be on him. So I think he could be the player in representing the Buckeyes in New York come December.
And I'm going to give you one final name, okay? Right. And I don't know exactly how this is going to look because circumstance will come into play here, but I'll just go with it. My number one young, under the radar guy, like next wave kind of Buckeye to watch is Arvell Reese.
It's a good one.
I'm going to say Arvell Reese will be a starting linebacker by the end of the season for Ohio State.
I like it. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that works, but it would not surprise. I think him and Gabe Powers are guys that I think are very interesting, if not this year, for the future. They've built a little bit of some depth in that room, which I think is only a good thing. And right. Arvell Reese is another guy kind of like Sonny Styles who can do a lot of different things.
You talk about like base packages and what kind of personnel is going to be on the football field, right? Because you got Sonny Styles that's playing an outside backer position that could be more of that hybrid look, and Cody Simon, who's a captain of the football team, manning the middle there. So I just think everything that I've heard and just a couple times that I've been out there and just watching some of the reps in the warm-ups and from going back to spring ball and then fall camp, Arvell just has that look to him. Like he just looks like a maniac out there that wants to be on the field so bad that is ready to hit anything that is moving. So I just look forward to seeing the reps that he gets. And I really look forward to seeing him get some of the action in this week 1 game against Akron and see what he does with the opportunities. Because he's the type of guy that every time he steps on the football field, he is telling the coaches something about the next game and the game after that.
Yeah. Well, and you hope these first 3 games, at least, you see a lot of a guy like Arvell Reese.
Yeah, you do.
That means the Buckeyes are handling their business. Starters are getting out of the game, and you're getting to see those guys, that depth that Ryan Day has talked about a lot. Speaking of getting out of the game, Timmy, you got stuff to do. You've been generous with your time already, so go ahead, get out of here. I will talk to you tonight, 6:33 on the Buckeye Show?
Yes, I look forward to it, Pat. We'll talk some more. We'll just build off of what we've already been talking about here for the last half hour.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks again, Tim. I'm glad the season's here. I'm glad you're back on the show. we're going to get you back here more now that we're in a more regular routine.
Let's go. All right, guys. Thanks for watching and listening. Go Bucks.
All right. Thanks again for Timmy. I missed having Timmy on during the off season. It was like a hole in the happy hour that needed filled. But yes, so we covered our bold predictions there. Again, I saw a couple people in the comment section throwing some things out there, but if you have more, I will read some of those here at the end. But I want to talk about, and I was going to talk about this with Timmy if we had time, but he has, work to do, I guess. The pressure of being the Buckeyes in this team or this season. And Steve Hellwagon, my coworker on Bucknuts, wrote a story. If you haven't read it, you can find it over on our site the other day about how Ohio State's seasons have gone when they've come into the season ranked either number 1 or number 2. And I won't ruin the whole thing, but slight spoiler, doesn't often go well for the Buckeyes. And look, the past isn't in this case an indicator of future success, but I think that it is an interesting thing to note, and especially in a year like this, where the Buckeyes have pretty much since they lost that game to Missouri, and then all these guys started to come back, the talk has been about what this team could accomplish. And to their credit, the players have not run from that. It was Denzel Burke who said it first early in the offseason, natty or bust. Other guys have said it. They have leaned into the fact that they believe they are the most talented team in the country and a team that can and should win the Big Ten and win a national championship. These seniors do not want to go out without having a pair of gold pants, a Big Ten championship ring, and a national championship ring. And so they've embraced these expectations. But that's a lot easier to do in the offseason. Yeah, you've got to put in the work. You've got to do all that. And look, I'm not saying they haven't. I've watched some of these workouts in the spring, some of these workouts in the summer when we were out there for recruiting camps. They've certainly put in the work, and I have no doubt that this team is ready to take on the challenge that is the 2024 season. But how do you now handle the pressure every week? Because that's what you're going to face. And I think back to 2015, and obviously you're in a very different situation then. You're coming off winning a national championship. This team is coming off an 11-2 season, but every week was criticized for that team. And I think there's a difference that I'm going to get to in a second, but each game, regardless of what the Buckeyes did, there was criticism about it. It wasn't enough. It was, you didn't win by enough, things like that. I remember covering it, and look, frankly, I will be very frank. Those of us who cover the team are a part of that because we have a standard that's high. But I mean, you look at this 2015 schedule. Yeah, they go to Virginia Tech on that Labor Day night, win 42-24, 38-0 against Hawaii, but then 20-13 and 38-12. That's against Northern Illinois and Western Michigan. Indiana, 34-27. And you see my point here, like, because they weren't just winning every game 50-0, there were a lot of questions about why wasn't this, why wasn't that? And, I remember Urban Meyer that season, just, he wasn't enjoying it, and the team wasn't enjoying it. And so I think that this team has to take a different approach because the pressure is going to be there. The talk after each game is going to be trying to measure up to the best teams in the country. What did Georgia do this Saturday? What did Oregon do this Saturday? What did, pick the team in the top 5, top 10, whatever it is. Like, Ohio State's going to be consistently compared to those teams. Ohio State's also going to be compared to its own standard. Is this good enough to win a national championship in games against Akron, Marshall, Western Michigan, even some Big Ten teams that they're going to be heavily favored against? If they don't cover spreads in like back-to-back weeks against teams that they're big favorites against, how do they handle the questioning and that type of stuff? Because while this is a lot of hard work, this also needs to be enjoyable for these guys. And I think that Ryan Day has found a way to do that with the way that they've put in their work this offseason. I don't think that this will be a season handled like an Urban Meyer team with all these expectations might have been, because Urban, for all his positive traits, one of his negative traits is like he can't get out of his own way at times in terms of the pressure he puts on himself. If you watched that documentary that Netflix did on the Florida teams he was a coach of, he admitted like he just wasn't enjoying it. And I think Ryan Day is a very different type of coach and recognizes that these players need, especially these seniors who came back for one last ride, need to be in the moment, enjoying the games. Yeah, you need to go out there and you need to take care of business, and you need to look like the best 1, 2, 3 teams in the country every week, because otherwise that noise is going to get loud. But you also need to recognize that, as Ryan Day said a few times this week, you only have 12 guaranteed opportunities to play this game this season, and you need to enjoy those. Got to win them. Got to win at least, most of them, hopefully all of them if you're a Buckeye fan. But, how do you handle that pressure and balance having an enjoyable time while also recognizing the challenge that's in front of these guys? And I think that's going to be the key to this season. The talent is going to be there. No doubt about it. This team is super talented. The experience is there. The leadership is there. Like, the ingredients are all there to, at the very least, win the Big Ten, go to the playoff, make it to the semifinal. Like, for me, yeah, I understand the natty or bust conversation, and I think that that's fair to expect. But for me, like, if you make the semifinal and if they lose on a field goal, for instance, like, yeah, it wasn't what they expected, but if they've won the Big Ten and beat Michigan, like, I don't think that this season is a complete failure. So, can you go from point A being Saturday against Akron all the way through and find a balance of enjoying it while also putting in the work and recognizing what needs to be done? And I think that will be the key for Ohio State this year is handling each week, looking the part, but also recognizing that you need to have some enjoyment with it. And, I think the fact that they are such a senior-laden team certainly helps. Like, I don't think a Jack Sawyer, a Denzel Burke, guys who haven't really won anything, a Will Howard who came here with one goal in mind, right? He's won a Big 12 title, but he wants to be in the college football playoff competing for a national championship. Quinshon Judkins, those type of guys. Like, I just don't think that they're going to allow this team to slack off. Not even slack off. That's not the right term, but to have, downwards. And there's going to be a game for sure or two where, it doesn't all, for whatever reason that day, it doesn't look right. And, but the Buckeyes still win because they are the more talented team. How do they handle all that? I think that will be key for this season, because everything else, like I said, is there. So the pressure and handling that pressure is going to be very interesting, because I think everything else is at their fingertips, no doubt about it. Want to run through some of these comments. Again, if you had any bold predictions, you haven't put them in the chat. If you tune in late, bold predictions for the season, throw them in there, or any questions you still have about this team. We'll start with this first one from Jermaine H. Runnels, a White Claw. Yes, that is what I'm drinking today, though I do have this really nice Ohio State cup that this isn't great if you're not watching, but it's got all sorts of different Buckeye things. I'm not even sure where this came from. Probably my fiance, but I like the glass. Cheers. Let's see what else we got here. Predictions for Jeremiah and Carnell. Well, Timmy and I talked about this earlier, and we were talking about our bold predictions. Tim said Jeremiah Smith over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, which would be the best ever by an Ohio State freshman wide receiver. I don't think that is out of the realm of possibility, but I also am not sure. Like I said, I think Carnell Tate leads this team in receiving yards, so I think big things are coming for him. I think that Jeremiah is going to be very good. I think there will be some freshman moments for him, but I don't know in terms of a number. I don't know what to put on him. We haven't talked about Emeka Egbuka, Brandon Innes, plus they're going to run the ball quite a bit. So it's hard for me to put a number on that when, we don't know how much they're going to throw the ball, or if they do go out and blow out almost every team, the teams that they're supposed to, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate may not be in the game much in the second half to put up huge numbers. So it's just hard to predict until we kind of see how they're going to use each guy. But I do think there is a pathway for both Jeremiah and Carnell to have very big seasons, breakout seasons for both of them. Jermaine Runnels also mentioned Jelani Thurman. He says he shows his ability and supplants G. Scott Jr. Don't forget about Will Kazmarek at the tight end spot too. Not surprise me if he is the starting tight end on Saturday against Akron, though I do think they will play guys. Look, I think I've said this before, I think on this podcast, I think this team needs to use Jelani, or they risk losing Jelani because of the transfer portal and things. And look, I'm not saying you have to put him out there just because you're worried about him entering the transfer portal. He's obviously got to earn the right to be on the field. He's got to do the things. You don't just give the guy, a spot. But I think that he is talented enough to be a really interesting weapon for this team and bring something that they have not had from the tight end spot. Now, I will say you don't necessarily need that at Ohio State because you have all these other weapons, but it's just another option in there. So I think as the season goes on, find ways to work Jelani in. I certainly agree. I think he's got so much talent, so much potential. You just keeping him on the bench seems like a waste to me. And look, you go back to the Cotton Bowl, last game the Buckeyes played, Jelani Thurman started the Cotton Bowl. Now, he only ended up playing 2 snaps in the game. They ended up taking him out, and that's kind of on him, I think. But they gave him the start. Must be something there, right? Jermaine Runnels also says, I think it's someone will return a punt or kickoff for special teams. Ryan Day guaranteed it on the Ryan Day radio show. So who am I to argue with Ryan Day? It's been way too long. 2010 for a kick and 2014 for a punt, I believe is what it is. Maybe I have those backwards, but it's been far too long since that's happened. Rick Guest said the linebackers have to generate more turnovers and turnover chances. Steele Chambers had 1 interception last year, and Tommy Eichenberg forced 1 fumble. Complete agreement. We touched on the turnovers earlier. That's got to be the difference for this defense, in my mind. You can have a successful defense without turning the ball over. Georgia proved that. I think their second national championship season, they weren't a high turnover team. One of the 2 years, they were not a high turnover team, but it makes it a hell of a lot easier if you turn the ball over, because not only is the other team getting off the field, but now your offense has the chance to go down and score. So yes, I think that's got to ramp up. I know that that's been a focus for them this offseason. And I know that there's been a lot more turnovers forced in practice. And I don't think that's just on the offense. I think the defense is doing some different things, being a bit more aggressive than maybe they were last year. So I think you will see more turnovers, and the linebackers have got to be involved. As I said with our bold predictions, Sonny Styles, I think, could lead this team in turnovers this season. Mike Schaefer, Patrick, enjoyed your article on Buckeye transfers. Which one gets drafted the highest next year? I had to pull this up because there were so many of them, and just kind of scanning through who all the guys are. I think probably, assuming he gets the opportunity this season, I think it could be Dallin Hayden. I'm a believer in this kid. I was a believer. I thought he should have played more at Ohio State. I still don't really understand why he wasn't on the field, that Michigan game a couple years ago and whatnot. So for me, if he has a big season at Colorado, now he's got to win the job. And last I checked, he's still pretty much in a battle for that. But I think he could certainly be a guy who could get drafted fairly high out of this group. I know people aren't going to agree with me on this, but Kyle McCord, if he has a big season at Syracuse, which is not outside of the realm of possibilities, maybe he's not a first round quarterback. But if you go and look back at my story from August 21st on where Ohio State's transfers are playing and kind of what's going on with them, it's not like it's a list of guys that certainly are going to, play this season or whatnot. I mean, I think the one guy that's definitely going to be a starter, Noah Rogers, and he's a sophomore, and not even necessarily definitely, but like he seems in the close, one of the guys that has an easier path to playing time. Enoch Viamahi is another one. Look, he's at Washington. It sounds like he's going to be a starter at guard there. Not a guy who had a lot of success at Ohio State, but if he can put together a good season at Washington, he could be one of the top guys on this list. But back to Kyle, I think if Kyle's numbers were what they were last year as a first-year starter at Syracuse, I think people would be talking about what he could do as a second-year starter, and those numbers jumping up. They weren't terrible. They were just not good enough from an Ohio State first-year starter perspective. If he puts up big numbers, there's definitely a path to, late first round, early second round pick, maybe. I mean, he'd have to show some things and he'd have to develop, but I think that is a possibility. But I would say of that group, if Dallin Hayden can break out, as a talented running back, a guy that doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his body, that's a guy I could see getting drafted relatively highly. Running backs don't go that high, but we have seen it. Bijan Robinson obviously was special and whatnot, but I think he could see his draft stock certainly skyrocket if he has a big season. Let's see what else we've got here. Mike Schaefer also said high hopes for the linebackers this year. Styles whiff on Blake Corum touchdown round still haunts me. Look, I think it still haunts him. I think it's part of the reason that they've moved him to linebacker where he's not the last line of defense. And I think this better fits his skill set in terms of, what he can be used for. And, just, I think this fits better for Sonny and his skill set. And Jeremy Blake said, C Downs plus 3 touchdowns. I assume you mean on offense? We're talking offense for Caleb Downs. I can certainly see it. Maybe he gets one, a special teams one. Maybe he gets one in all 3 phases, right? That would be pretty cool, right? Whether it's an interception or a fumble recovery, takes that to the house, gets one on a punt return, which I do think he will do some of. And then, maybe they do something with him around the goal line or he's able to break a big one on offense. Touchdowns in 3 different ways. I'd have to go back and see. I don't know the last Buckeye to do that. I'm sure it's been a while. All right, so we're going to wrap it up, but I do want to finish with the same way I finished last year on these shows during the season with what you'll be reading on Sunday after Saturday's game against Akron. Basically, if you weren't familiar with this a year ago, this is kind of what the major headline will be, maybe not word for word, but just kind of a general idea of what we'll be reading about, what I'll be writing about, what you'll be reading about on Sunday after the Buckeyes are wrapped up against Akron. And I think it'll be something along the lines of Buckeyes blowout Zips, back up national title hype. I don't think this is going to be a very close game. I think these guys, and we'll have predictions on Bucknuts tomorrow that you can read with the entire staff, but I think these guys have been waiting since the Cotton Bowl to get back out on the field. And it's not even get that taste out of your mouth. It's just like reset and get back to being a dominant football team. And I don't expect any letdown week 1. I think it's unfortunate for Akron that they are the team first on the schedule because I think it's going to be a tough day for insert opponent there. You could have, they could be playing Georgia week 1. And the scoreline may not be as the margin may not be as different or as wide, but I don't think any team playing this Ohio State team week 1 after all that they have done this offseason stands much of a chance. If I'm wrong, you'll certainly let me know, but I think this will be, they want to come out and take care of business. And that's what I expect from this team Saturday afternoon, 3:30 live from the Horseshoe I'm so excited, guys. It's great to be able to talk Buckeye football all off season. The spring is fun. We get to be at practice and you get the spring game and all that. And then summer, we get to be out there a little bit with the recruiting camps and talking to guys. And, there's perks of all of that for sure in this job. Fall camp, we do get to see some practice, but now it's here. This is what we've been waiting for, right? And I know you all are excited. I'm excited for tonight and watching some games and kind of getting back in the swing of it. I watched all 4 games that were on last weekend, though I fell asleep pretty early on in the Hawaii game. This is what it's all about. It's here, and I think we've got a great season ahead for the Buckeyes at Bucknuts. I think it's going to be fantastic. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff on any of these platforms that you're watching this. Follow. If you're not a Bucknuts subscriber, it's a great time to get in. This season is upon us. We're going to have a lot of fun over at Bucknuts this year. We're going to have fun with this podcast. I hope to have some different guests on along with Timmy throughout the year to try and change some things up. We will have some people as we go through the season that come from the other side of things to talk about the opponent. But we'll get there. Let's get through this week. I will be on along with Steve after the game with Dave Biddle on his show right here on all these platforms. So tune in for that. We'll be talking about the game. We got it, baby. It's here. Let's go and enjoy it. Could be a special season for the Buckeyes. Cheers, everybody.